picks it up on his own. Come here. Still has the line on the wall, knocks it out of the air. Evelyn picks up the passed ball. Evelyn going back. Hooked in there by Anya, just misses.
This is what a lot of people say. I have a spread tree or that's coming down on the horse's withers. Not many people get to see the inside of a saddle, but this is essentially a tree or the chassis or the frame of the saddle. And when the tree is spread or it's coming down on the horse's withers, this is essentially what the problem is. And this is the gullet plate. These are the verticals and these are your cantle plates. And typically that means that the gullet plate has been fatigued and or there was an accident, a rollover or whatnot, and the plate essentially cracks. Sometimes, most of the time it will crack here, sometimes they crack a little further down towards the forks of the tree. And what that does is that causes what essentially is where your panels are, will allow that saddle to come down on the horse's withers and create a bad fit situation, and will affect certainly the way the horse feels when the saddle is on the horse's back. This tree will be brought back into shape. The plates will be welded and actually be stronger by the time it's all said and done than when it was actually made. This is what it looks like from the front. This is what a typical polo tree looks like from the front that isn't spread or broken. So you see that the spread is quite pronounced on this one. Let's say you feel the horse start to squirm under you and you're like, oh, what's this all about all of a sudden? There's a lot of times you could take the saddle while it's all together and literally put the saddle in between your legs and your knees and literally squeeze down right across the front. You can see how this tree is starting to move back and forth. They shouldn't do that if it's not broken.
Okay.
So that right there is a sign. And also sometimes you'll feel a break in the middle of the saddle, and all you have to do is put your hand down on the middle of the seat and pull back on the front, and that will show whether or not the tree is also broken in the middle. So without even taking it apart, you can diagnose pretty much if the tree is solid or not. So, and then fix it and whatever else you think needs to be done. On the withers. It's across the withers because it'll come down. Literally, and also you'll start to probably feel yourself drop going forward all of a sudden because there's nothing there holding you. Sure, because you know, if you think about what the saddle is going through when you're playing in it, you know, in any other style of riding, you're supposed to be in your center. You know, you don't go very far from home, so to speak. In polo, you're out, and the whole nature of riding, it's like Western riding in an English saddle. And that saddle, though it's supposed to, you know, be solid, is still torquing. And that will eventually create a break. And of course, at time, everything's going to give. So, you know. Now, for example, with this saddle, this came in because of a broken cantle. And that's from a continual player came too far back, hitting the cantle of the saddle one too many times, not just breaking the tree, but actually breaking the cantle plate, which is typically right in here. And they typically break somewhere in this area where the cantle and the vertical meet, right in here. And this will also be sent out, new plates put in it, and then be reattached and then rebuilt. And they say, well, what is it worth doing? Okay. The average polo saddle today is somewhere in the $1,500 range, either on the low end of the spectrum, right around $500 to $750, and your higher end is $2,000 to $2,500. So the average cost of the repair on something like that is between $400 and $500, compared to replacing the saddle for 4 or 5 times as much. So yeah, that it's worth doing. If you exceed the cost of a saddle or any piece of equipment above 60%, then you have to start thinking about things. Then you have to start weighing out your options. But most of the time, that's not the case.